Hey everyone, and welcome. When we talk about tackling climate change, the conversation almost always lands on money. The assumption is we just need to spend more, right? But what if the real problem isn't about how much money we have, but about the fundamental rules that control it? Today, we're going to dig in and see why the rulebook might just be more important than the bank balance.
This one sentence from our source material really gets to the heart of the matter. It's a powerful idea that kind of flips the whole script on its head. It's suggesting that the solution isn't just about finding more funding, it's about changing the very behavior of that funding.
All right, so let's start with the big question. Why isn't just throwing more money at this problem working?
This is the question we really have to ask ourselves, isn't it? We see these massive spending packages for disaster recovery, yet it feels like our levees, our pumps, our coastal defenses, they're all in this constant state of crisis. What are we getting wrong?
And here's the answer. The problem isn't operational, it's architectural. We're not just using the wrong tools for the job, we're using a system with the wrong design entirely. It's kind of like trying to build a skyscraper using the blueprints for a bicycle. It's just not going to work.
And that gets us to the absolute core of this thing, what's called the misalignment problem, which is really at the heart of all these failures.
Okay, so on one hand, you've got what are called mission cycles. This is just the predictable physical reality of our climate infrastructure. A flood pump, for example, might have a 5-year lifespan. A levee might need major work every 15 years. These are long-term, pretty stable cycles. But on the other hand, you've got political cycles. These short, really volatile 3 to 4 year election windows and annual budget.
Okay, and this diagram, this really just lays it all out, doesn't it? On the left, you see the steady, multi-decade needs of our climate defenses. And then on the right, you see the chaotic, up-and-down, short-term reality of political budgets. You can see right away, these two things are running on completely different clocks. And wow, this next image shows you exactly what happens. Just look at that jagged red line. That's the political cycle. It is constantly interrupting the smooth, predictable life cycles of crucial things like pumps and levees. The money stops and starts, but the physical decay of the infrastructure, that never stops.
So the very tools we're using just aren't built for this kind of problem. Grants, they're one and done. They just evaporate. Debt? Well, that just adds liabilities that make a community more fragile when a crisis hits. And insurance? Let's be honest, it was never designed for a world where once-in-a-century disasters seem to happen every couple of years.
So what does this all lead to? Well, the source material calls it the 5 failure modes, basically a cascade of systemic breakdowns. You get things like temporal fragility, where political short-term thinking just ignores long-term decay. You get fiscal fragility from these crazy volatile budgets. And you even get institutional fragility because we lose knowledge and expertise with every single election cycle. These aren't small glitches. This is the entire architecture failing.
So, if we're going to boil it all down, this is the core diagnosis. The system fails because our capital is forced to behave like politics, not like the climate. The architecture itself is the problem.
All right, so if the old rule book is totally broken, what's the alternative? Well, the source proposes a new one, a really interesting solution called PSC-G.
Now, it's really important to get this. PSC-G is not just another fund or some new grant program. You should think of it more like a capital constitution. Its entire purpose is to create a new set of rules that completely insulates that long-term climate funding from the short-term chaos of politics.
And this chart here just puts it side by side, and man, the difference is night and day. The traditional system we have now, it's reactive, it's driven by elections, and it's based on debt. PSC-G, on the other hand, is proactive. It's driven by the actual physical needs of the assets, and, this is key, it creates zero debt. It's a total shift from reactive political whims to proactive, rule-based stability.
Probably the best way to think about it is this. We already have independent central banks to protect our monetary policy from short-term politics, right? Well, PSG proposes the exact same logic, but for our critical climate infrastructure. You create an independent body that makes sure the system stays stable and funded no matter who happens to be in office.
Okay, that all sounds great in theory, but what does this shift actually do in the real world? How do we actually go from being so fragile to becoming truly resilient?
So let's take a look at developing nations, because they're often the ones hit the hardest. Under the system we have now, a climate shock forces them to take on debt just to rebuild. But that debt makes them more fragile, which means the next shock is even more devastating. It's a vicious downward spiral.
This is where PSC-G comes in and breaks that cycle completely.
Because it provides zero liability capital, nations can preemptively renew and strengthen their defenses without going into debt. So instead of becoming more fragile after each disaster, they actually become more resilient. It turns that vicious cycle into a virtuous one.
And the really cool thing is, this model doesn't just stop at one country. It's designed to scale up. The big vision here is for a global regenerative climate fund. And again, this isn't another central pot of money controlled by one group. It's a federated network of all these national and regional rule-based systems, all working together to build stable, predictable resilience across the board.
And that really leaves us with a final, big thought to chew on. This whole framework of focusing on the rules of the system, instead of just the resources in the system, it's incredibly powerful. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other huge complex problems are we trying to solve by just throwing more money at them, when the real issue is the broken architecture underneath?